Happy late Thanksgiving. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning at 11 o'clock for Cooking and Culture, Indigenous Peoples of the Americas. My name is Adrienne Johnson, and
My name is Courtney Lloyd.
so this morning we're going to be making a couple of dishes which you may have seen. We're going to be making a pumpkin soup and a sunflower seed cake. So much like dishes from around the world, if you were Scottish or Irish or English, recipes change and evolve over time. But a lot of people seem to think, or at least I ran into it when I did outreach at the Pine Ridge Reservation. What I ran into in the Rosebud was people thought of Native American cultures and Indigenous peoples' cultures as things of the past. So they would think of Pilgrims and Indians from the past, or and like almost like ancient Egyptians, because that's the kind of things that they were used to seeing in popular culture. But these are people and cultures that are alive and thriving today that have survived through so much. And we're going to show you a couple of the traditional food ways, much like you might make, if you were Scottish, say you might want to make haggis or something like that. So these are traditional food ways that we're going to be sharing with you how they're made in a modern kitchen. You ready? All right, so the first thing we're going to start with is the sunflower seed cakes. So I've already got our salted water. Turn this on. And then to that, we're just going to add our sunflower seeds. So after this point, you actually cover this and let it simmer for an hour, which is why we're not going to do that. We're going to skip this part of the step. So I'm actually going to turn this back off and set this to the back, because what you're going to end up with at the end is when you drain it, you're going to end up with sunflower seeds. And you're going to want to mash these into a paste. This is actually a smaller version of what is used to make a Cherokee dish called knutschi. And this is a large log that you crush hickory seeds and hickory nuts in to make that dish. But you just want to mash it up till it gets to be kind of a not peanut butter, but this consistency here. And then we add our, we add 2 tablespoons of cornmeal into this. And I'm going to keep You can also use a fork or a spoon. Even a meat knife will work to mash these up. And if you don't want to wait an hour for them to cook, you have an Instant Pot. You can put it in. You might need another half one. No.
So how can you tell it's the right, well, I guess you'll show us what the right consistency looks like.
So you want it to kind of look like a loose sort of cookie dough almost.
Okay.
So you can see how it's sort of crumbly, but it will hold together. So then we're going to set this to the side. And then you want to make patties, kind of like hamburger patties. So, can you get in there?
Sure.
Okay.
So you're right, it does kind of feel like that cookie dough texture.
Yeah, like Christmas cookie dough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a little bit grainier. And then you're just going to make a patty like this.
Make a mess here.
I don't think that's possible. All right. All right, so I'm just going to set these on a plate, just a couple of them, and set this to the side. This is why I hauled this good again today. Ready? Let's not cook that. That wouldn't be good. Get a little bit of oil and let that get hot.
And so what temperature do you have the oven or the stove on?
I actually like to put it up on high to medium high just because it heats the oil a little faster, and then I can turn it down if I need to.
Okay.
Oh, Instant Pot. 15 minutes on the soup setting will make them the perfect temperature. You just drain it, you're good to go. Lots of people have Instant Pots, and they like to use them.
That's true. They're very convenient.
I got mine on Black Friday sale last year for $10.
Ooh.
Courtney, do you want to tell them a little bit about the speaker that we have coming later?
Okay, so just so everybody knows, neither one of us are indigenous people. We actually have a speaker coming from the Ojibwe tribe, and he will be coming and he will talk about basically from land to table. So he's going to talk about different ways they prepare food, they get food, they prepare food, and then just kind of the Native American way of life, at least for his nation. So we'll get to hear from him after we finish our cakes and our soup. And then, of course, if you have any questions during this whole process while we're cooking, or when Shane, his name is Shane, by the way, or when Shane comes in, just feel free to add it to the chat. And Matthew, if you can read some of those out to us, we will definitely try to answer as many questions as we can as we go.
And actually, Courtney, I don't think that you knew this because we haven't been working, but my great grandmother is actually what a Cherokee. My great grandfather, not great grandmother. My great grandmother actually was disowned by her family and forced to walk the Trail of Tears by her own father because she chose to marry a Cherokee man. So it's kind of close to heart, but I did not grow up fully immersed in that culture.
Right.
So I still don't feel like I am a own voices in that way.
Right.
Because I didn't grow up in that culture. So I have a few recipes and things that have been passed down. But other than that, like nobody wanted to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I know there is some Native American back in my family as well, but I think it's just so far back.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Chances are, if you're in America at this rate, you at least owe your survival.
Yes.
After all the pilgrims who landed at Plum Park would have died, other one probably not fed them.
But you're right, since I guess, neither one of us really grew up in that experience, we don't necessarily know that way of life. But it is still interesting to know that, we have some of that back there in our family.
Hi, we do have a few questions.
Ooh, all right.
Someone has asked to please repeat what you've done. I think the audio went out a little bit, so if you could just recap that. And also, someone is asking if you can add other ingredients, and if so, what would you suggest?
To the sunflower seed cakes, I would not add anything else to it because it will crumble. I tried adding a little bit of seasoning to it, and it just doesn't seem to want to work. But however, these will go with anything, so you can top them with anything that you want to.
Like honey or just, anything.
I would even go so far as to say you could probably top them with smoked salmon if you really wanted to, if that's your thing.
Oh, that's my thing. So as far as ingredients, we do have it listed on our website where you registered for the program, but I can go ahead and list the ingredients for the sunflower seed cakes again. So for what we're doing, it'll make about 15 cakes, what I'm going to list here. So 3 cups of shelled sunflower seeds, 3 cups of water, 2 1/4 teaspoons of salt, 6 tablespoons of white cornmeal, and 1/2 cup of cooking oil or shortening.
So the first thing that we did was we added water in our sunflower seeds, and then that needs to cook for an hour in the salt. And then we added the cornmeal until it looked about like this. And then we formed the patties and put them in the oil to fry. So magic of television, if you will, we made some ahead of time. So I'm actually going to set these off to the side so we can show you how to make the soup. They'll continue cooking in that hot oil. When they're done, this is what they look like. They almost look like, if you're a fan of salmon, they almost look like salmon cookies. People think of gluten-free craze as a fairly modern thing, but a lot of indigenous cultures use almonds, or not almond, but acorn flour, or flour from sunflower seeds. A lot of flour didn't come from wheat. Mm-hmm. So really, this newfangled gluten-free thing is actually just going back old school.
Been around. What about almond flour? I know, is that?
I would assume that places where almonds grow naturally, that would have been a flour that was used as well.
Okay.
So we're gonna start our pumpkin soup at this point, so we have time for our presenter. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and add our butter.
And so with this, we have 2 tablespoons of butter or margarine.
Alright, okay. Alright, I'm gonna let that get melted just a little bit. Don't have to let it steam too much so you can still see the camera. And we're gonna add our 32 ounces of milk. You just walk. And then we're gonna add our pumpkin. Now you can use fresh pumpkin that you have roasted or cooked down. Every year I make pumpkin soup out of the leftovers, like when we carve pumpkins.
Mm-hmm.
And I let them out of the house because, and we coat them with coconut oil on the edges so that I can make pumpkin soup.
Ah.
So now we gotta stir this so it all gets combined. We don't want it to quite boil, so I've turned the heat down to medium. So we're gonna keep stirring this so everything gets combined and it's no longer lumpy.
Do you want me to stir while you get the other ingredients?
That would actually be great.
Yes.
Because while that's happening over here at our ingredients area, you can see this. I don't know if they can see this or not.
Oh, yep.
Okay. So we have our spices, our cinnamon, and our mace, or in this case we're using nutmeg as a substitute. Mace is actually the outer membrane of the nutmeg that's been ground up. So a good substitute is the rest of it, which is the nutmeg itself, marjoram, and our salt. So I'm just going to take a spoon and just kind of gently mix those together. We're going to pour it into our maple syrup and just kind of give that a stir. Kind of makes sort of a shiny, sticky paste. I'm going to set that to the side because right now we need to add our honey.
Oh, I got it.
There we go. All right, so we're going to put in 2 tablespoons of honey. And if it seems like this might seem like we're using a lot of spices that are in pumpkin pie, that is not your imagination. It is very similar in flavor to a pumpkin pie, a little bit more savory. That would provide you with quick, sustained energy. And actually, I brought some to Courtney for lunch one day, and she wasn't hungry the rest of the day.
Very, very filling.
So once we have this all smooth like this, if you want to keep stirring, I'm going to add these ingredients just in little bits. And I should also say that there is actually orange juice mixed into this maple syrup as well. The juice of 1 orange, or if you're using mandarins, because your kids really like those work well too. Just use 2 of them. All right. So you can see our spices sort of starting to, I'm going to use the word bloom, but there wasn't any color to this at all. Hopefully you can see that. It smells really good. And as far as adding something to this particular dish right here, you said someone asked, I think that if you wanted to top it with sour cream and roasted pumpkin seeds, that would complement this really well. And Shelley put bacon in it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I am a huge bacon fan.
Yeah, she really likes bacon. I just splashed myself. We can pretend like that didn't happen. There we go. So it doesn't take very long at all. So our soup is actually already done. You just want it to simmer. Well, I told you it was really quick.
You're right. This did not take very long at all.
Okay. So, do you want to try it? I'll wait. All right.
Cool. So since our soup is complete, did anybody have any questions? Trying to see.
And you could use any kind of squash theoretically for the soup if you didn't have pumpkin. Any kind of winter squash, so butternuts, acorn.
Let's see.
What's the one that's like okay, is it?
I don't think I know that one. The herbs.
Hey Liz, how you doing? Good.
So I'm trying to go through and see some of the questions here. Let's see, or comments. I had one person said they look like veggie patties. Oh, talking about
Yeah,
our
they kinda
sunflower
do.
cakes. Yep.
And
which
they
are.
do have protein, of course, because you're using a nut as the flour source.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and she says, thanks for explaining what the mace is. And how old are these recipes? So, and I just put my book away. Oh, I can get back to that one just a moment. Let's see, I have somebody else. The recipe printout references Indian recipes 1992 from Bismarck, North Dakota. Yep, that is yep, that actually is the recipe book I believe I used, and I can go grab that and show you guys what that looks like. I don't believe the library has copies. We don't have copies of that.
Which is why we provided the recipe sheets.
Right. And again, that's if you go back to the event page where you registered, we have the recipes listed on that page in PDF files. So you guys are welcome to use those as well. Let's see. Did they use butter in the original recipe, or did you modify it to our modern lifestyle as you mentioned at the beginning?
The very original recipe may not have used butter, but it would have used some sort of fat, animal fat, whatever was available. Just like the recipe.
Okay. And then we have someone, how is the mandarin orange incorporated, I guess, into the soup, like you said? So
This is a citrus.
yeah, just I guess a citrus flavor. Since there was orange juice you mentioned in the
Maple syrup.
the maple syrup.
Incorporated it.
So yeah, you can do orange juice or like something citrus. And then what can you serve with the cakes? So
We kind of we thought they went well together. But there is actually a friend of mine, Julia, and she really likes to use them to make sandwiches. I gave the recipe to her when we were getting ready to start making this program. And I said, hey, you really like gluten-free things. You want to try this? And she used them to make a breakfast sandwich, actually. I thought that it tasted really good.
okay. So to go back on where we got the recipes, Matthew, if you kind of want to cut to the one of the other camera, yes. So this is the book I got it from. It's and let me see. And you're right. Yeah, from Bismarck, North Dakota. Trying to make this as clear as I can.
And it's a recipe from the Idaho Tribal Technical College. There's a recipe from all over the country.
Right.
And there are some historians who believe that this pumpkin pie or this pumpkin soup is actually a precursor to the pumpkin pie that we think about at Thanksgiving. That when the ability to bake things like we think of as pies, whenever we were able to, settlers were able to do that, that they actually combined this soup with eggs and made a custard and baked it into a crust.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. Okay. So since we have about finished with our dishes, if Shane, if you are there, I would like to introduce you. Would like, oh, awesome. If you would like to speak to our audience, and again, everybody, this is Shane. He's part of the Ojibwe tribe.
Yeah.
So,
Ojibwe, yeah.
Yes. So here he is, Shane. Take it away.
Hey everybody. My name is Shane Keepness. I'm from I guess what you guys would call an Indian reservation in Canada, called Muscophetung First Nation. So in the US they call them Indian reservations. up here in Canada, they call them First Nations, and a lot of people call us First Nations because we're the first people here in Canada as well. And one of the things that in my particular community, I mean, we have like grocery stores in towns that are a drive's length away, but the way that I grew up is that we had to we actually had to hunt for our foods, so we have to fish. We have to hunt deer, moose, elk, so we have to be really creative with our foods. Um, Growing up, and then that's just kind of like what you're born with in Canada, is just really to be creative with the foods that you harvest. And so first of all, I just wanted to acknowledge that I grew up on First Nations, and then I'm currently doing a PhD, and one of my research interests is doing health and food sovereignty, and food sovereignty basically means that we have the ability to go out and get our own foods and to look after our communities. And then one of my jobs um, is I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but in Canada it's called the chief and council. So we have a chief, and then I'm actually a councilman that works alongside my chief. And so our job is to ensure that our community is looked after. And so one of the things that we actually do is we actually we hunt, and we take some of our youth out, and we teach them how to hunt and how to look after themselves. And so one of the things is that's the important part of that is also learning how to cook. And one of my favorite things to cook is obviously elk. And I don't know if you guys have seen elk before in person, but they're massive. They're very big beings, and they're very hard to hunt, and it takes a lot of skill. And that's just one of the things that I'm fortunate about food. And so one of the things is that once we hunt the elk, and then we have to butcher it. So we do a lot of the butchering ourselves, and then we butcher it up. We turn it into steaks. We turn it into hamburger, sausage, and we like to spice it up. And one of the things that I like to do is I actually like to barbecue a lot, so I like to smoke my meats. And then I just like, I copied people down from like YouTube, and learning about how to like barbecue better, like a more of a like a Texas style barbecue. So we'd actually take like elk meat, and then I would do like elk roast and smoke it for several hours. And I'm continually learning and teaching myself as well too. And I don't really follow like recipes or anything like that. What I do is I actually like to freestyle a lot of my cooking. So I just like, some spices that I used before, I'll I'll mix it up. I like to cook with a lot of spicy foods like cayenne, especially in my meats. And yeah, just always learning. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to try do like a elk beef, like a elk brisket, similar to a beef brisket. And then so one of the things is that I smoke my brisket for about 14 hours, and I do ribs for about 6 to 7 hours. So I'm like continually always challenging myself on how I go out and hunt. And then once I take that hunt, try to teach myself how to butcher everything, add all the seasoning, and then I do try to do all my own cooking as well too. And then, like I said, as part of my nation, we a lot of the times, a lot of our communities, we don't have the luxury to go to grocery stores because a lot of our communities are isolated, and we're 2 3 hours away from a grocery store in a lot of the cases up here in Canada. So that's why we rely on hunting. um, as I became old, like I started out like hunting rabbits and small game, and we have these things called prairie chickens where they're kind of like wild chickens, and you could go out and hunt them. So I was like started off as a young kid hunting those things, and then as it became older, started hunting deer, moose, elk. And these are like moose and elk are very massive beasts, and it takes a while to hunt these things. And then, but basically, I just wanted to share that there's people still out there that are, still going out and on the land and hunting. and then preparing and butchering and then and bringing it to the kitchen table and applying their own style of cooking. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you. Shane,
Okay.
this is Adrienne, and you're making me hungry. I love elk. It's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
So I have gotten a few questions for you, Shane. It looks like someone wanted to ask, where are you getting your PhD?
University of Victoria. And then I actually finished writing my dissertation. I'm currently in the process of editing right now. So I see all the questions right here. Do you mind if I answer them?
Oh, okay. Yes,
Sure, go for it.
So what do you do to get wild taste out of your meat? So that's a tough question, and it's one that's like kind of always on the go. But one thing that I think that really helps is like when you harvest the animal, you hang it up in a cold like a freezer, or like in Canada it's always cold, right? So I can hang it up kind of outside for at least like 8 to 10 days, and then I guess the wild meat is actually in the fat of the animal. So if you actually when you're butchering it, you're taking off the fat, and then also when you're cooking it, you season it well. And it's kind of like a balance of that, and then also just kind of like what the animal eats in general. And it's kind of tough. I'm still learning as well too I'm still learning how to get like the wild taste out. And then I have another question here. Are you researching the health issues that are reported in the media as serious problems, such as diabetes, and how that can change? That's actually part of my research as well, too. So in my particular community, we actually have a 12% rate of diabetes. So we implemented a youth prevention strategy. So that's why we're trying to get them to be on wild meats, because in our opinion they're a lot healthier because they're less processed, right? They're not sitting on the shelf for they don't have a bunch of preservatives in them, and then that's all part of it. And so the title of my dissertation, I don't really have a title right now. I'm still working on that, but I'll share it with Courtney if anyone is just interested. But it's a lot about like hunting health, not so much about cooking, but more so the impact of what we're doing on our community scale, and making sure that everyone is fed and healthy. And I have a question here. Any recommendations on learning more about Indigenous communities in our local areas? I would say I don't even know, because I haven't been down to your guys' particular area, but there definitely is reservations, and I would kind of like to see what type of cooking that they have down there, because like I copied my barbecue style from like Texas barbecue style, so I could only imagine um what it's like down. So do you grow vegetables? Yes, we actually have community gardens. We have community gardens that we actually harvest a lot of our vegetables out of, but then a lot of the times too, we try buy from the store as well with a lot of our cooking when it comes to vegetables anyways.
Hey, Shane, it's Adrienne again. Do you find that when you add a little sage or even apple juice when you're roasting your elk, that it helps take any of that gamey flavor away? Because I don't think elk is very gamey to begin with.
I don't think it is either, but I mean deer is sometimes, and moose. But so what was the question?
I was saying that sometimes I'll use like sage and then apple juice on venison or elk. When I roast it, just it tends to help counteract any of the bitterness from the gamey flavor.
Oh, cool.
So someone was asking. Yeah.
So are there any food preservation techniques and unique to your community in addition to smoking meats? Yeah, like my one of my grandmothers, she's like 88 years old. She does a lot of canning, and she stores like a lot of all types of foods like crab apples, different things like that, which is really unique. I never seen that before. So she does a lot of canning, and she's actually like teaches people how to do canning in the community. And then also one of the things like for preservation, I actually do like my own I do like elk jerky and dry meats, and then make sure that they last a long time in terms of preservation. And then when I do my own butchering, I make sure that they're wrapped and put in the freezer. So like I've actually have elk meat from last year still. So
Courtney actually went to look up some resources for local resources for Indigenous peoples. We want to make sure that we gave you the correct information.
Yes. So.
Oh, and here she is.
I'm back. So for Dallas, because yeah, this is Dallas. We actually have the Urban Intertribal Center of Texas, and that is located here in Dallas. And they definitely have some resources. If you do have more questions, or I can actually put in some more information in the chat. Just give me a few minutes. But yeah, that is definitely some more local resources that you guys can use.
And actually, we can post the resources for the surrounding areas, access to Indigenous Peoples and Tribal Council information as well. As some of the recipes we've done today, there's a couple of links to other recipes that we didn't have time to share today that I think you all might find interesting. So we will share those with you as well.
Yes.
We'll send that out in an email afterwards and also post it to the event page.
Okay. Oh, and we had someone post Dallas ISD has an office for services for Native students. Wow, so that's really useful. Oh yeah, I think someone. Let's see.
Shane.
yeah.
Hey, we have a question for you. It says, are you allowed to hunt all year, or do you have a hunting seasons like we do in Texas?
So in Canada, we have what's called a status card. We actually signed treaties with the Crown that gave permission to the Canadian government. And one of the things that our chiefs negotiated was that we have the treaty right to hunt, fish, and trap. And so the first things that we ever hunted up here were buffalo, right? I'm from the plains, and so we actually hunted buffalo first. And then we moved on to elk, deer, and stuff like that. And not to get too much into history, but we actually signed treaties that allowed us to hunt any time because we are dependent on it. So it's the hunting right to fish and trap, and then we could do it in any season in the summer and just, yeah.
Oh, cool. And we had somebody post a link. TexasAlmanac.com for topics and cultures on American Indian history. So
feel free to research why.
Exactly, yes.
Joyce, we will do so, and we will include that in the links that we send out as well. And so I have a personal question for you, Shane. Have you personally been to Pipestone in Minnesota? Have you had the chance to go down there, or is there a place similar to Pipestone in Canada?
I haven't been to Pipestone, but I've been to a lot of reserves in the U.S. Like, so what do you mean by like what it's like to, or similar to?
Pipestone is a national monument and part of our National Park Service system, but the indigenous people still are allowed to come there and, of course, take the pipestone from there to make peace pipes and things like that. They have permits as well. And I didn't know if because cultures from all over the U.S. go there to get pipestone. So I didn't know if you also people from Canada came there, or if there was a place similar to that was a place of communal gathering across tribal nations as well.
So yes, there's a couple places in the U.S. that a lot of like natives go down from Canada to go down to the U.S. And one of the things is we actually have ceremonies, and one of them is the Sundance. And a lot of my relatives, because I'm also part Dakota and Lakota, along with being Ojibwe. So a lot of my roots also stem down to Cheyenne River in South Dakota. So a lot of people actually, a lot of my relatives go down to South Dakota, and to a lesser extent North Dakota, for ceremonial purposes, but not necessarily Pipestone. There probably is like some of my family members that go down there, but I just, I haven't really heard. But a lot of my family goes down to a lot of the big gatherings as well down in South Dakota.
Shane, we have a question asking how to spell your primary tribe's name.
I can't even spell it right. Hold on. I'm just gonna type it on the computer. OJIBWE.
Okay, O-B.
No,
Oh, hang on.
OJIBWE.
That's right. I can. O-J-I-B-W-E, right?
Yeah, and Ojibwe is actually pretty common in like Minnesota. Like, yes. Corey
Yeah, that's
spelled
what I
it
thought
right.
maybe might have
It's
been to
actually pretty.
Pipestone.
Yeah, it's pretty common down in like Minnesota, and then there's a lot of Ojibwe in Canada as well too. Just as much as they're in like Minnesota, like Michigan area, that type of stuff.
And then the other thing that we had was, what other foods besides meats are you working with personally?
A lot of garden vegetables. Just trying to think off the top. Yeah, a lot of garden vegetables. Like, it's really cold in Canada, right? So we need a lot of meat to get make sure that we're good for the winter. But yeah, garden vegetables and growing certain things like that also. And I know some communities grow like their own tobacco, that type of stuff.
Okay. Jane, you have another question. What is your tribe's language besides English? Is it also Ojibwe? Ojibwe?
Yeah. So for like, say if I belong to the Ojibwe tribe, that's the language that I would speak. Same with Lakota. There's a Lakota language. There's a Dakota language, and then also another prominent group is in Canada is the Cree. And then if you're Cree, that means that you would speak that language. I actually speak Ojibwe and Cree, so it's kind of cool. Speak more than English, but yeah, I speak Ojibwe and Cree.
So I'm just going to ask, because you're in Canada, do you also speak French?
I learned a little bit when I was a kid, but I just really haven't pursued it as an adult.
Every time someone I know says, "Oh, they're from Canada. Oh, do they know French?" I'm like, the entire massive country does not speak French.
Yeah, really, like where I'm from in the prairies in Saskatchewan. So that's another thing. I'm from Saskatchewan, and that's like the middle of Canada, and then to the west of me is Alberta. To the east of me is Manitoba. They don't speak French. Really, French only, like, a lot of French speakers come from like Ontario and like further east on the east coast of Canada.
Right, someone else is asking, do tribal nations in Canada have much interaction with each other? And then
Oh, yeah.
Also,
Yeah, for sure. We're always in contact with other nations, and we try to work together the best that we could, because we're governed by our own laws. We also have to work together to develop certain things within Canada. And yeah, we try definitely work together. Like my particular community to the west is a community called Pascuas to the east. There's a community called Pipots, and they're all named after prominent chiefs. And so actually our reserves are connected. So we all got to work together in some way, shape, or form. And then also in regards to the question, are they similar enough to converse? So there's a group of languages called Algonquin, and actually Cree and Ojibwe are part of that Algonquin language group. So that's why I was able to learn Cree and Ojibwe, because they're similar, but also at the same time, like how the way that words are pronounced, the way that words are spelled are very different. So it's kind of learn. Cree is very hard to learn. Like some of the words are very like tongue twisters for sure. And the other question, how do y'all protect your land to hunt and live off of from non-First Nations? Well, the thing is, like, people disrespect reserves in Canada, and I don't even do my hunting on my reservation. I actually go off my reservation to do a lot of hunting because there's more elk out there. But we actually have off-reserve hunters, but they're other First Nations. And because of COVID, we actually locked down our borders, and we're not allowing other hunters or to come onto our lands and hunt, just out of the precaution and safety of our community.
So since you brought up the pandemic, I'm going to ask the question, how has that affected your community as far as interactions and cultural celebrations and things like that?
Well,
Do you feel like it's had a...
Yeah, we've had a huge impact. Like we're a social people. Our communities are very social. Like you guys must have heard of powwows. We love to gather any way that we can with our families and our communities, and we like to share our culture. And because of COVID, we haven't been able to gather as much as we want to, and it's also dangerous. Like now we have a restriction in my particular province where we can't do gatherings with more than 5 people. But and then my particular nation, like we're very social people. Like we like to get together as much as we could, and it's affected us. It's affected a lot of people, and we're not used to kind of being isolated and just staying home all the time. We like to be out and visiting and being social.
I figured it's pretty much the universal experience of what's going on.
Yep.
We have a question that I think is right up your alley. Just like you're incorporating barbecue into your cooking, are there any food techniques you'd like to see non-First Nations people incorporate into their own, or like raising how they raise meat and things like that?
I would actually like to see them like I think like when you harvest something and like everyone takes it to a butcher. I think the trick is like learning to butcher yourself and then do all these cuts, like understanding what the tenderloins are, how to take off tenderloins off an animal. And also in our culture, we respect animals, so we put down tobacco. And what that means is when you put down tobacco, you take an animal's life. It's showing respect. And we do a prayer after we take animal's life, because that animal's giving its life so that you can continue on yours. So in our cultures, we always respect things. We take something out of this world, we gotta put down tobacco and restore the balance and give thanks. That's why like in a lot of our cultures, we're very thankful for anything that we have. And then I would just like to see like more non-First Nations people give that type of thanks for their food, because we eat food every day, right? We gotta give thanks for that. And so in our cultures, that's why we put down tobacco, is it's giving thanks and acknowledging that an animal gave its life for you to continue on yours. And I just would like to see more people have that type of respect for their food.
I agree. Okay. It's a great point, because we're all related. And okay, Joyce, I'm not sure what you meant by, is that part of reparation?
Remetriation?
Shane, can you say that?
Remate?
Is
Like,
that part of
are you talking about like
rematriation?
Are you talking about like matriarchy? Is that what you're referring to?
Joyce, could you clarify your question? Give me back to Mother Nature.
Yeah, for sure. That's huge in our cultures. That's like we wouldn't be indigenous people if we weren't giving back to the land, and also to note that like all these huge, say there's oil projects, there's tar sands that are destroying the land. Indigenous people are the ones that are like standing up to defend and protect the land, and are also going to jail, going to jail and to defend the land. So we're always, that's like a part of also what we're doing, and we're trying to get like my particular nation, we had like 17,600 acres of our lands that were illegally taken from us. So we're trying to get that back into court and illegal proceedings. And yeah, we had a lot of stuff taken from us.
Bit of an understatement, but yes. Chances are, if you're living in the Americas and you're not a First Nations person, you're living on land that once belonged to a First Nations or Indigenous person.
Stolen land.
And it's just how would you want non-First Nations people to help in giving back to Mother Nature?
I would say that the best way is we always like for Indigenous people's cause. It's a good fight. Everyone knows that they feel it in their heart. I mean, everyone knows that everyone's land that a lot of people are living on belong to a tribe or Indigenous people, and we welcome everyone that came here, that came to Canada. We signed treaties. We welcome, like, you know, everyone that comes here. We're very welcoming in our culture. We knew that a lot of people were coming from Europe, and it just get to know like your area, where you're from. Like I seen in the comment, there's only 3 reserves in Texas. Like, what are those reserves? What kind of tribes are they? What kind of stuff do they do? You know, they have community events, they have powwows, and powwows, there's a lot of good cooking there too. And like I could only imagine like kind of the blend that like people are doing with like barbecue and, you know, traditional native foods. And so one way to help is just to understand your area, where you live, what's around you, and then just be an ally to the cause.
And Shane, we have one more that is very important. We've gotten it twice. Do you hunt on public lands or private lands outside the reserve?
So in Canada, we First Nations could hunt on Crown land, and so a lot of reserves are Crown land. And then we also have these things called provincial parks. And then First Nations, because we have the treaty right to hunt, fish, and trap, First Nations could hunt in those provincial parks all year round at any time.
Okay. So I guess that means there really are no limits.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, because you're only hunting for what you need at the time. You're not hunting for sport. You're hunting to feed yourself.
Exactly. It's like we're
Right.
not trophy hunters. We don't hunt for horns. We don't hunt for a big rack of elk horns. We hunt to feed people and feed feed our families, and we're sustenance hunters. So
Yeah, you're not taking like 10 out for the freezer and 2 for the wall. You are you are just taking what you can use at the time, which is why you're allowed to hunt all year round.
yep, and it's all about respect. That's why we never we're taught to not overhunt. There's a saying in our cultures where you take what you need and leave the rest. And it's just a respect thing. Like, it always go back to respecting the animal. Like, we don't need to hunt and do all that stuff. So like overhunt for sure.
Okay.
Is there a particular takeaway that you would like for everyone to have, especially, Indigenous Peoples Day has been yesterday, and in light of our world's pandemic that we're going through right now, what is something that you would have as a takeaway for people going forward to unite as a human family, just in general, to bring, just peace between everyone, but also peace between humans and the environment.
Well, one of the things, especially in the United States, because you guys are such a big country and it's a melting pot. There's so much culture and races that a lot of people like forget that Native Americans exist. But we survived like a lot. Okay, I'm gonna tell you a statistic. Can anyone guess what the population in North America was like prior to 1491? Can anyone guess that?
I should know this. A lot higher than most people would presume. We're going to go with that. We have
So
a guess of
someone-
10,000.
So 10,000.
About 1 million.
Someone said not even close. Researchers and scientists say that indigenous people in North America prior to colonization and European contact was 112 million in North America. So you look at our populations now in Canada, we have maybe 2 million First Nations that people identify as indigenous. So if you look at our whole population has been totally wiped out, and you could read the book 1491 by Charles C. Mann, and that's where I got that number from. So that's where the 112 million comes from. So our people have been decimated, and it's just like our cultures are meant to respect. And I mean, like, I think the world could learn a lot from Native American cultures, and like people have stereotypes about us, and that's fine, but that's like with every race as well too. But I mean, I think we could teach a lot of cultures on earth respect, especially about food, and especially about being in kind with nature. Because you think about it, when you remove yourself from the city, one of my favorite things to do is hunt, because I'm in the land. I go out camping for 7 days with some of my good buddies, and we're out in the wilderness. And I think when you're out in the wilderness, it does something to the human spirit. And I don't think we're meant to be up in these big cities with these fast cars and our 9-to-5 lives. I think the human spirit really gets a recharging when we're out on the land. And that's just all I had to say.
That's the purpose of the Wilderness Act, was to provide space for people to enjoy the land untrammeled by the works of man, without any sign of the human experience except for yourself being there.
Yeah.
So,
Also,
I do think people need
I got an Instagram, Shaner7. I do a lot of my hunting and I like a lot of my way of life on my Instagram. Courtney, could you post that? The Shaner with 2 R's 7 at Shaner7.
Yes.
And if you guys want to keep up, you guys can follow me and then ask me questions, and then and I do a lot of like hunting stuff, and I do a lot of cooking on there as well too.
Shaner, SHANERR.
All right.
7.
All right.
No,
That's his
2.
Instagram.
No, actually 2 R's, Courtney. 2 R's.
Sure. I mean, that's not Courtney. It's me.
Yeah, 2 R's, Shaner7. So I mean, you can follow me, and then if you have any questions or whatever, I answer to my direct message.
2 R.
Shaner7.
And that's for Instagram.
No, it's not a T, an R. Instagram. So we have someone who has asked how you say thank you in Ojibwe.
Miigwech.
Miigwech. So in Cherokee, and I believe Navajo as well, there is no word for goodbye. Does Ojibwe also?
So
you also don't?
In our way, it's called what we say is there's no goodbye. It's I'll see you again. In our language, it's called Kigawapa Min Minawa. It means I'll see you again. Even when a relative passes away, it's not a goodbye. It's I'll see you again. Kigawapa Min Minawa.
That's a beautiful part of First Nations and Indigenous people's culture that I wish everyone would adopt, because you're not saying goodbye. You're saying I'll see you later, because we're all related and we all depend on each other.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Shane.
Thank you. God bless everyone. Stay safe in this quarantine pandemic, and hope everyone does
You as
well.
well.
And thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us for Cooking and Culture, Indigenous Peoples of the Americas. We thank you all for joining us today, and we will send those links out sometime in the next week.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.